narcissism epidemic currently happening. The news is filled with people who harm others on a daily basis. They take advantage of others for reasons of greed, manipulation, and advancement. They are object-oriented, and they seem to treat people in the same way that they would treat an ant, cold and indifferent. Many of my readers are subjected to one or more narcissists on a daily basis. They write to me with different questions revolving around dealing with the narcissist in their life. If a person is intuitive, introspective, and analytical, they can become adept at dealing with narcissists in any walk of life. They can become a sort of expert in interacting with narcissists, psychopaths, and sociopaths so that they avoid ultimate harm. A person who experiences insult and injury should advance into self-protective modes when a narcissist or sociopath is around. We are wired to scan our environment for dangers, and then to react in appropriate ways to reduce the amount of danger to ourselves. The problem is that many of us have broken sensors. We've had so much trauma and poor experiences in our lives that we stop looking for positive people and positive experiences. We fall into a trap where we begin to settle for people who are lower on the food chain. We marry beneath us instead of striving to find a partner who is healthy, supportive, and uplifting. We don't demand more of our friends. As a society, we've become wimpy in challenging others who do not meet our expectations that we have set for ourselves. We are told to be nice, and thus we be nice to all the wrong people. While we are on high alert for dangers, those who have been exposed on a regular basis to narcissists and psychopaths become desensitized in their ability to detect healthy and unhealthy people. If we were raised by self-absorbed parents, we don't think twice about dating a self-absorbed mate. Healthy people have a healthy sensor. Their sensor tells them when someone else makes them feel bad, and thus they choose to stay away from those who give them a bad feeling. A person whose sensor is broken will actually feel bad much of the time. They become accustomed to being around people who are negative and rude. Their body and mind will experience discomfort when they are actually around good people. They will distrust a nice person who is being nurturing, loving, and kind. It has not been their experience that people are who they say they are. Thus, the person who has experienced negative people or trauma in their life becomes largely distrustful of anyone who appears nice. They are actually less likely to pursue a relationship with a nice person than they are to pursue a relationship with a bad person. At least they know what they have with the bad person. A nice person always has the possibility of becoming bad, and thus a nice person actually appears more terrifying to a person who has trust and attachment issues. Some people enjoy hanging out with narcissists. They want to become the primary narcissistic supply to the narcissist in their lives. A narcissist can be taught how to be a positive and supportive force in a person's life. It takes time, persistence, and repetition in order to encourage growth and change in a narcissist. Narcissists are quite averse to growth and change overall, as many of them suffer from the Peter Pan syndrome. Thus, the women who take on these proverbial Peter Pans tend to feel as though they are forced to mother someone who hasn't quite grown up yet. The truth of the matter is that most narcissists are immature by nature. The people in his life often feel a strong drive to mother, nurture, and protect this childish Peter Pan. He is endearing and charming after all. 1. What is the source of narcissism? It is no doubt that you already know the answer to this question. The narcissist in your life might be your lover, might be a boss or co-worker, could be a friend or acquaintance. A narcissist could even be your mother-in-law. Narcissistic personality disorder and narcissistic traits know no boundaries. It can affect people of either gender. Narcissists can be of nearly any race, religion, or creed. The people who have narcissism are said to have a narcissistic injury. For some narcissists, this does seem to be the case. But the reality is that a person doesn't have to suffer an injury to their psyche in order to become a narcissist. Narcissistic people are literally born every day. A narcissist might be someone who simply has an object-oriented and task-oriented brain wiring and ways of thinking. Certain people are born with brains that lack empathy, communication, and social skills. Narcissistic traits can occur when a person has a head injury or brain trauma. Changes in mood and psyche have been seen in car accident victims or children who have had sports injuries. Damage to the brain can cause disconnects in the wiring that might increase a person's tendencies towards being short-sighted, rigid, critical, chronically unhappy, and to lack empathy towards others. Damage to the brain from illness, medication, drugs, alcohol, and other external factors can also increase the traits of narcissism. Narcissistic people can occur when there has been a significant trauma in someone's life. One trauma causes PTSD, whereas multiple traumas can cause complex PTSD. Many people don't realize they've grown up in an environment around self-absorbed, manipulative, or abusive people. They think that they should have coping skills to allow for them to survive through a negative situation. But the truth of the matter is that most people don't go through a traumatic event unscathed. Even a narcissist, who might disassociate every time there is a trauma in his life, suffers the effects of the trauma when his disassociation stops. Narcissistic traits can co-occur with other personality disorders or medical conditions. People who have autism spectrum disorder, low IQ, and Asperger's syndrome can be severely narcissistic. People who suffer from borderline personality disorder, bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, OCPD, and OCD can show significant tendencies toward being self-absorbed in their interactions with others. A person with severe drug, gambling, porn, sex, and alcohol addictions can have narcissistic traits. An aging mother who does not see a distinction between herself and her adult children can be quite narcissistic in her relations with her adult children, her grandfather, and her in-laws. Even nurses and teachers can be narcissistic in their relationships towards parents, children, students, and patients. A hoarder or a person with OCD can be largely self-absorbed and narcissistic. The person's mind is constantly overrun by worry, repetition, and task orientation. Any person who's distracted by addiction, obsession, and compulsion cannot act appropriately towards other people. These people are often seen to have narcissistic traits in their relations with others. A person with OCPD, obsessive compulsive personality disorder, is often critical, rigid, inflexible, and stubborn towards other people because of his constant drive to be a perfectionist. If he cannot control himself and others around him, he believes that his survival is ultimately in jeopardy some way. He may fear losing his job, his home, or belongings due to mistakes that are made. You can see why a person with OCPD struggles to delegate to others. His mind is so caught up in a circular thinking and anxiety that he can't see past it. It causes him to be blind to efforts of others to the point that he prefers himself and thinks of himself first and foremost. A child who has learning delays or developmental problems can become severely narcissistic. If he is teased and traumatized throughout his life, he will have a tendency towards self-absorbedness in the absence of many friends. His negative behavior might cause people to shun him, and thus he has no external reason to change his self-absorbedness. In his absence of friends, he does not learn how to relate to or share with others. A child who doesn't receive enough positive reinforcement or have positive role models will have a tendency towards self-absorbedness. A child who is neglected and not taught any manners early in life will often resort to being rude to others. There are many children who are pattern-oriented and visual-oriented or not successful in text-based learning that is typical of schools nowadays. So these children feel left out and inadequate early in life. It's no wonder that they become self-absorbed and rude around others at times. We try to medicate them, take away their recess time, and force them to sit in a boring classroom for 8 hours out of a day. We wonder why visual learners and pattern learners are inattentive in a classroom that is largely using text-based teaching instead of hands-on learning. The narcissism epidemic might also be happening due to the increase in people with antisocial personalities getting together to have children. Before the internet was invented, antisocial people were less likely to attract mates and procreate. Computers have increased the chances for socially awkward people to gain employment and meet a mate. Two self-absorbed people might just commensurate and tolerate each other long enough to have some offspring. If they are antisocial, it reduces the likelihood they will appropriately socialize their children. This is a struggle, especially if the parents lack communication skills and the ability to read social cues. Narcissistic traits fall on a spectrum, so a person can be slightly narcissistic or severely narcissistic. A person can have full-blown narcissistic personality disorder, or they can simply have narcissistic traits without the full-blown disorder. Labels or reasons truly don't matter here. The truth of the matter is that a narcissist can be extremely impulsive, arrogant, and obnoxious. A narcissist can ruin your life in a matter of minutes, days, months, or years. The speed at which he does this is sometimes only dependent on how much access you give him to your accounts, your friends, your family, and your psyche. 2. What are the traits of narcissism? Many of us know when we are dealing with a narcissist. He is often rude to service people. This includes being miserly when tipping at restaurants. He might have road rage when he's driving. He refuses to see all of the solutions to a problem. He doesn't appreciate the things that others do for him as much as other non-narcissistic people would. The narcissist is self-absorbed. He thinks about himself above everyone else. His needs come first. The only time another person's needs come first is when he's trying to gain something from that interaction and that effort. The narcissist exhausts quite easily because he uses up a lot of effort in eliciting attention, admiration, and affection from others. This makes him chronically grumpy and forces him to isolate in order to refresh his batteries once they're drained. The narcissist is arrogant, abrasive, and rude. He refuses to look at his own bad behavior for any length of time. He projects blame and shame onto others each and every time that he is guilty of doing something wrong. He feels uncomfortable when his behavior is under scrutiny from others, and thus does anything he can to push the discomfort on to someone else. He cannot think through the process of self-correcting, and thus doesn't often employ this in his life. He often has poor planning or lack of follow-through, and has learned that self-correction requires too much effort for it to be useful to him in getting what he wants. He goes with what he knows is successful for him, and it is often immature mind games, lies, and manipulation that worked for him with his family of origin. The narcissist detests taking responsibility and accountability for anything. He will toot his own horn or take credit if someone else did something of grand quality, but he will never be accountable for his own bad behaviors. He feels that the end justifies the means, and thus he implements lies, distortion, omission, and half-truths in his dealing with others. He has learned to do what it takes to get what he wants out of life. It's like that this behavior was reinforced somehow in his early life, and this is the reason that he resorts to it so often. The narcissist is averse to change. He doesn't seek personal growth. He remains stagnant in his life much of the time. He seeks thrills, admiration, and attention from other people at all times. He rarely does anything to gain such admiration and adoration. He feels that he is largely entitled to be treated better than others, and thus seeks out people who will do this for him. The narcissist is critical and verbally abusive towards others. He doesn't have a filter that stops him from saying whatever it is that he feels like saying. His mother either didn't teach him manners, or he didn't listen to the teachings. He lacks empathy at times, or he has the ability to turn it off whenever it suits him. If his needs trump the needs of others, he can seem altogether careless and cold. Many narcissists have a blank stare that seems to pierce into the soul of another. It is quite intimidating to be on the receiving end of that stare, particularly when you know that you have upset the narcissist. The narcissist likes to throw people off kilter. He either relishes his ability to do this, or he is completely oblivious that he affects other people in this way. He might feel disorganized in his own thinking, or in the processing of his environment, and thus throws another person off simply by association. If he uses autopilot to navigate his life, He may be completely unaware that another person is affected by his chaotic and uneven temper. The narcissist likes to make other people feel as though they are going crazy. He relishes in his ability to lie, manipulate, and use mind control. The narcissist often appears bipolar. He drifts between awareness and obliviousness. He drifts between consistency and inconsistency. He drifts in and out of autopilot in his interactions with others. His mind changes like the wind. His energy levels and moods fluctuate quite drastically, simply based on how much work he has put into the efforts to gain admiration and affection from others. He obsesses over his efforts to impress others and becomes obsessed with gaining narcissistic supply. 3. Why is narcissism a problem? There are many problems with a person having narcissism. A narcissist might be violent towards his spouse or his children. A narcissist might make impulsive decisions or errors in judgment that put another person's life in danger. A narcissist might become obnoxious and manipulative, causing narcissistic injury or complex PTSD in others. The more damage that is done by a narcissist, the more fearful and distrustful others become of one another. Living in a world with narcissists is like living inside of a whodunit murder mystery dinner theater. A person is always at a heightened state of awareness in scanning their environment for potential threats. The more threats there are, the more reinforcement this person gets that his environment is dangerous. This occurs until the brain finally concludes that everything external is dangerous. The types of people who finally succumb to this false reality to resolve the cognitive dissonance in their brain might end up experiencing Alice in Wonderland syndrome or disassociation as a result of trying to live in a world with narcissists. People with low IQ might be largely narcissistic due to their reduced ability to learn appropriate manners without significant amounts of repetition. People with low IQ also have a tendency towards brain wiring that causes impulsiveness. They might have reduced ability to memorize things, which exacerbates their angst and frustration in trying to survive in a busy and hectic world. People who fall into this category can have extremely high levels of adjustment disorder and aggression towards others. A person who does not understand complex communication and conflict resolution might resort to violence to solve their problems instead, such as those with autism spectrum disorder respond very well to positive reinforcement. ABA therapy, which is used for autistic children, is generally helpful in using positive reinforcement and repetition to show a child what is expected while removing bad behaviors like tantrums. Narcissists, psychopaths, and sociopaths respond to positive reinforcement much better than they respond to negative reinforcement according to some studies. That means that no amount of yelling, correcting, or consequences will make a narcissist or psychopath stop doing the behavior that is making him feel good or have positive results. An article on livescience.com explains how the psychopathic brain has been shown to lack the ability to respond appropriately to punishment and consequences. Scary stuff, right? 4. Can we handle the narcissism epidemic? Many people might wonder whether we can handle the epidemic of narcissists. Narcissists are self-absorbed by nature. They often won't bother with anyone who doesn't instantly satiate their needs for attention, affection, and admiration. If you don't pay attention to a narcissist, it's likely that he won't pay attention to you. He will go about his business in pestering others who appear to be easy targets to get whatever it is that he wants out of life. We might want to have a relationship with a narcissist. This is completely fine so long as the partners in the relationships do not form a trauma bond of mutual dysfunction. If we are dysfunctional, it's easy to become attracted to someone who is like-minded and traumatized just like us. Some people do not want to change their lives or their behaviors, however. If we choose to date or marry someone who is largely averse to change, they will also hinder us in our ability to make change in our own lives. A person who is averse to change will be afraid of a partner striving for change because it might mean the end of the relationship due to one partner outgrowing the other partner emotionally. We might just want to teach our narcissist manners. Many narcissists had mothers who were narcissistic, unintelligent, depressed, autistic, or just plain frazzled. They simply have not learned manners or learned how to act appropriately in the world. In this case, we can implement some positive reinforcement using repetition and clear behavior expectations. We can understand that the narcissist's brain wiring is largely immature, and we can realize they are Peter Pans in their relations with others. Without repetition, this narcissist cannot learn positive manners. A narcissist is all consumed with his image. If we point out to him that he's being rude because his mother must not have taught him any manners, he won't change because he doesn't want to feel as though he is deficient in any way. His parents might be a large narcissistic supply, and thus he doesn't want to gain any disapproval from them. He will clean up his act because he doesn't want his parents to feel that he never learned anything from them or to be disappointed in him. Every child hears that manners are important, and thus reminding the narcissist will often bring up childhood memories of others teaching him good manners. Thus, he might just take on the duty of reminding himself that he must use manners in his dealings with others. We can go no contact with a narcissist in our life. This is especially useful if the narcissist is toxic, manipulative, and largely harmful to us. Many of us have a full plate and thus cannot tolerate the chaos and drama that is brought into our lives by someone who is self-absorbed and obnoxious. We worry about our own reputation being ruined by someone who is rude and impossible. There is another way we can relate to the narcissist. We can handle the narcissist's manipulation, misbehavior, and pessimism by employing a series of tactics that can help us to feel as though we have a good grasp on the situation. We feel helpless when we allow someone else to lie to us, harm us, and abuse us. Feeling helpless in a way during a traumatic time in our lives can cause us PTSD and complex PTSD. Long-term chronic stress and suffering interrupts our learning and our rational behaviors. To avoid getting complex PTSD from our relationship with the narcissist, we can do little things that take his focus off of us. These efforts can interrupt his attempts to control us. It can help us to feel like we aren't the victims of his powerful manipulation. We share these tips and tricks with you in an effort to help you to get back your life again. These tips and tricks are tried and true, and they have been used by a multitude of people to avoid being manipulated by the narcissist. Number 1, ignore the narcissist. The narcissist thinks he is special. Ignoring him altogether causes significant pain and agony to a narcissist. This is more torture than anything else than you can subject the narcissist to. He cannot exist without admirers, and he seeks to elicit attention from people who act as though they are peasants in his kingdom. The narcissist's sense of greatness only exists in his own mind. Don't fall for his folie à deux or shared psychoses. Most people who are not close to the narcissist will tell you that he isn't anything special, and it is good practice to check with others regarding a person's reputation. Most healthy people set their friends up with mates from an inner circle in order to weed out people who are toxic. If you met at work or online, chances are good you might find 1 or 2 people who aren't in the narcissist fan club. 2. Move the narcissist's belongings to cause him the same level of confusion that he is causing for you. The narcissist thrives on consistency and repetition. He is on autopilot much of the time. If he is gaslighting you, trying to break you down by causing you confusion and disorientation, then return the favor by causing him to question himself on where his belongings are. Just don't snicker too loudly when he is frantically searching for his car keys each time they are placed in a different location around the house. Number 3, give him some busy work to do. The narcissist is sometimes a people pleaser, especially if he thinks that he'll get something back for his efforts. Take advantage of this by sending him on nonsensical tasks. Didn't you have an ice cream craving at 3 in the morning? If he spends time doing these mundane tasks, he will have less time to think of ways to be a nuisance to you and to others. 4. Offer his services to others. The narcissist is constantly looking for admiration, adoration, and affection. Many times he might triangulate you with other women in order to make you jealous or to instigate arguments between you and the other person. The narcissist enjoys people fighting over him. It strokes his ego by showing him that he's in high demand. Don't stroke the narcissist's ego. Give him what he wants. Put him in contact with others by farming out his skills. He can gain all the admiration and adoration that he requires while doing these tasks. The narcissist only has a limited amount of energy to spend throughout the day, and he will be busy fulfilling tasks rather than causing mischief. This will also help you to know where he is in case he's the type who cheats and compartmentalizes his life. When you get the narcissist in touch with others and farm out his skills, other people will appreciate you for offering his help. They might also be exposed to the narcissist for longer periods of time while the narcissist has low energy levels. If he becomes snappish while he's around them, they will begin to see the real side of him. This will give you an extra support system if you ever decide to leave the narcissist. Number 5, disappear a lot. Tell the narcissist that you must have mentioned to him where you were going earlier in the day. Insist that maybe he simply forgot or hadn't listened to you. This will cause him to start questioning his own sanity in the way he often causes his victims to question their own sanity. This is a form of gaslighting that you can use if he typically accuses you of being crazy. The funny thing about using gaslighting against a narcissist is that it will cause him to stop and listen to you more closely. He needs to validate whether it is him or you that is off kilter. He might even start taking notes to check back on things that you said. 6, be more successful than the narcissist. He feels that he is the top dog. Live a fuller life than he is able to live, and it will boast your own self-esteem. Most narcissists put so much energy into begging love, admiration, and appreciation from others that they aren't very successful overall. They're generally underachievers. It shouldn't be hard to boost yourself above the narcissist to prove that you are able to go further in life. He aims to lower your